Welcome to Flipper Talks, a family law podcast. We are Flipper, the Family Law Practitioners Association of Queensland. Family law is a wonderfully rewarding career, but is not without its challenges. Join us as we explore the issues that impact on the practice and well-being of family law practitioners. We hope our episodes will not only inform and inspire you, but encourage you to reach your potential. Enjoy this episode.
Thank you, Amy. It's wonderful to be here. A significant part of my work involves helping people to make confident financial decisions during periods of uncertainty, divorce being one of those. Really, we consider that financial advice is about helping people to understand their options, make informed decisions, and build a future that aligns with the life that they really think about after separation.
You work closely with people navigating significant life changes. From a financial advisor's perspective, what are some of the biggest concerns clients face in the family law context when they're going through a separation?
The biggest concern centres around the uncertainty of the future. People are asking themselves, am I going to be okay? Can I keep the family home? Will I ever be able to retire? How am I going to support my children in the way that maybe we'd planned? Often they're making these decisions while dealing with potentially the grief of the loss of the relationship, low trust, anxiety, and other significant emotional stresses. They're worried about their kids and what the future holds. So that's why financial advice during separation isn't simply about numbers. It's about helping people regain clarity and confidence so that they can make decisions that support both their immediate needs and their long-term well-being.
Thanks, Lynda. It's really interesting to kind of think family lawyers, will all kind of say it's important to get early advice, even before, if you're contemplating a separation. But what stage of a family law matter do you think it's most beneficial from a family advisor perspective for a family law client to be engaging a financial advisor?
Probably earlier than most people would think. Ideally, financial advice begins before those settlement negotiations commence. Once clients understand what different settlement options mean financially, they can start to negotiate from a position of knowledge rather than emotional. Early advice can identify tax implications, cash flow issues, superannuation considerations, and long-term retirement outcomes before decisions become too difficult to change. And potentially there are opportunities to restructure the family financial situation that actually put more money back into the pie rather than losing it to tax. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I also find that it reduced anxiety generally throughout the process once it's gotten underway.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads into, I guess, my next question, talking about that reduced anxiety, is moving clients through the emotional stress of separation. How do you help, Lynda, I should say, in helping clients make practical and informed long-term financial decisions under that stress of separation?
Yeah, it's certainly a very difficult situation to be in for clients. So the way that we try to do that is by asking someone to think about, if life was pretty good, not perfect, but pretty good in 3 years from now, paint me a picture of what that looks like. And often people struggle to, kind of paint that picture, but with a little bit of support and help, we can kind of tease out what that looks like. Once we establish that picture, we can begin some financial modeling around different scenarios. And then clients can see what each option might mean for the future. and many more difficult decisions become a bit clearer. So a good example of that is that most people have multiple goals. For example, ideally, I want to retain the family home, but also I don't want to be stressed about meeting my lifestyle expenses. So after we work on that person's future cash flow needs and actually identify those and then model out that ideal or, pretty good outcome, the outcome of keeping the home and meeting those expenses, the person might see that a compromise might need to be considered. So what are those options? You could reduce your lifestyle expenses. You could look at ways of bringing in more income. Are you prepared to work more? Or you could release capital from the sale of your home and relocate. Which feels more achievable to that person? So what we're trying to do is put that person in the place of controlling what that future looks like. So it's a more positive lens on the future. We're not ever saying to someone, you can't afford to keep your home. They see what that reality is and can choose what compromises they're prepared to make, if any. Sometimes it just works out that they can keep it all and it all looks rosy. So, but it's really in those circumstances where it doesn't look so rosy.
That modelling that you and your team do is so important because there is that real, I think you're just talking about that family home, that real emotional attachment.
Yes.
But as to what that looks like in long-term goals and just speaking through with clients as to what does that look like if you retain the house and then we're selling in 12 months' time because there's been that overextension and then all those sale costs are being borne by that one person. So I've really found that modelling really effective to be talking through all those options. So clients are going through with really wide eyes as to what that future financially is going to be for them.
Yes. And I think it really helps clients if they're, say, going into a mediation or they're going to their next collaborative meeting where they're working through that option generation options, and it helps them to unfix these very fixed positional type of thinking, because we all know that if you go into a mediation with a very fixed view of what you want and you have little compromises or your client has little room for compromise, it's likely not to be successful. So what we're trying to do is open up that client's thinking to all the possibilities that are there for them to actually reach a settlement.
And I'm jumping around now questions, but just to kind of pop in when you're talking about the collaborative, you work in the collaborative space with family lawyers and other professionals. What does effective collaboration between advisors and lawyers look like? And are there areas that you think family lawyers sometimes overlook from a financial planning perspective?
I think I think the best outcomes come when we all work together. So I think a multidisciplinary approach from a professional standpoint is going to have great outcomes for a client, in that we all have our lanes. We all have our areas of expertise and specialization. So I think there are common areas where we see maybe people falling into, and that can be things like not fully understanding the opportunities of superannuation, depending on the person's age. That superannuation can be an ideal place to actually build wealth. And these days, with some of the budget changes, it's become even more evident that tax is a really important consideration. So probably unknown tax considerations. For example, I've got a client who is going to be a non-tax resident of Australia, and in one of the settlement options is a significant share portfolio. So what we need to make sure is that if she does become or chooses to become a non-tax resident, that is going to have implications, because she can choose to pay the tax up front on a capital gain. You know, does she have enough tax? Does she have enough cash in the settlement to be able to meet that tax now? So depending on the client's future goals, it can mean choosing different directions in terms of settlement options.
So interesting to talk in so far as the superannuation and about retirement, insofar as superannuation being often one of the most significant assets in a property settlement. And in circumstances, sometimes we can have a significant age gap between some of our clients, where we've got somebody who is many years away from superannuation and being able to access that, versus somebody who may be, you know, coming to the end of their career as such and moving into those retirements. So I guess, what are some of the key issues or opportunities clients should be thinking about when it comes to super and retirement planning after separation?
That's where it becomes, super is one of the largest assets. We often see clients have, say significant wealth tied up in their home, but then there's also this pot of what can be considered inaccessible of money sitting in super. So it should be considered as part of their overall goals and what they're trying to achieve. For some of the example that you just gave, where there are significant differences in age, that's actually a great opportunity, because we can actually sit down, make sure that both people, or whoever our client may be, fully understands the opportunities that super can provide. And for the person who's, say, 10 or 15 years away from accessing their super, that inaccessibility is a real problem. It's a real issue if they can't meet their immediate housing needs and their immediate cash flow. So we would likely be saying, look, it is inaccessible to you, even though it's a future resource to you. If we've got the opportunity, it's probably more valuable immediately to the other person who's much closer to retirement. And there can be opportunities there. If we think about, we've got somebody who's, say, age 65 and somebody who's age 55, there's ways that, say, in a settlement, the age 65-year-old could access their super, draw out cash and pay it to the other person. So there's a whole lot of strategies that we can employ when it comes to super. It's just about understanding the system, and most of us don't understand it.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Lynda, about being in a team and all staying in our lane. It's about getting your players, unlocking different strategies and different options. We don't need to have that kind of cookie cutter approach to every settlement. It's about thinking a little bit creatively about how we can settle this matter for the parties in a financially positive way.
Yep.
And talking, I guess, from your perspective, what does financially sustainable settlement actually look like? And are there any warning signs that a proposed settlement may not be workable in the long term?
A sustainable settlement allows someone to meet their day-to-day expenses while also providing a realistic pathway towards future financial security. Often what I find is that people are very focused on the immediate, on the what's going to happen, can I meet my expenses in the next 1 to 2 years? And what accessing financial advice enables them to do is to actually project out that over a longer period of time to identify if there are any future issues. Warning signs might be maybe in those projections relying on or the person having unrealistic assumptions around investment returns, for example. You know, some person might say, oh, but I know maybe I could get 10% return on my capital, and so therefore I can actually live off my investment returns, but they're not really understanding the level of risk that they're taking to get that return. Carrying excessive amounts of debt and being under pressure in that regard, having insufficient cash flow or retaining assets that are really expensive to maintain. For example, it might be a holiday house at on the coast somewhere, and we all know what sea air does to maintaining a home. They may be underestimating the costs of maintaining some of these assets, and sometimes what appears to be the most valuable asset isn't necessarily the one that creates the most strongest financial future in the long term.
Really great insight. Have you seen any examples of where early financial advice has significantly changed the outcome for a client or given them greater confidence about their future?
Oh, many times. Often the biggest change isn't the settlement itself, it's actually the client's confidence to go into a mediation and feel like they understand what their bottom line is, that real confidence. So because if we think about the amount of investment that goes into navigating a pathway to a set of legal documents that creates, the resolution of the matter, it's a big investment for people to go into a mediation. You potentially have barristers, you've got your legal representatives, you've got your mediator, and you've potentially had business valuations and all this. So there's a big investment. So I think the more confident a client can be going into a mediation, the better. They're more likely to resolve and be able to think a little more commercially about their bottom line.
I think probably hearing what you're saying, Lynda, it makes me think insofar as a lot of resistance to settling can come from fear, a fear of not knowing what their financial future is going to be.
I've seen that many, many times. And often, I wouldn't say often, probably not often, but on the occasion where a mediation has fallen over and not had the right result, can be a catalyst to a family lawyer reaching out to us and saying, giving us a call and saying, look, I really feel like my client, we had some issues. They didn't seem prepared to make make decisions on the day. They were very fearful about whether the settlement would work for them. Could you meet with our client to, we're going to see if we can come up with, post negotiations, post the mediation, could you meet with our client to unpack some of that? And we will get those phone calls, and often things will resolve, in the next few weeks once that person feels more knowledgeable about what the future holds. So I would completely agree with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And finally, for someone listening who may be at the beginning of a separation, what are some practical first steps that they can take to regain that financial confidence and start planning for their next chapter?
One of the best places to start, and probably the thing that we all avoid doing, is actually looking at your cash flow needs. So we all hate the word budget, I think. But ripping that Band-Aid off and actually having a look at your family's expenses, I think, is the core to everything. It starts with cash flow. And if we can identify that cash flow need as a family, it's the beginning of everything, because it can work out whether it is affordable to keep the house or what all the different options are. So I would say start with your family expenses first. Really identify your assets, liabilities, where the money's coming in, what possibilities you have to generate more income, and gather those financial kind of basic basic kind of balance sheet type of personal balance sheet. And I think just getting that early advice from lawyers, I think many people are a little worried about seeing a family lawyer. They're worried that it's going to, and this is just from the feedback I get from people that come to see me first, is that they're nervous that a family lawyer might make it more, exacerbate conflict. And I always encourage clients to seek their legal advice, because it's so important. And I think family lawyers do an amazing job of trying to resolve matters in a way that reduces conflict, and people shouldn't be afraid of seeking that legal advice early.
Thank you, Lynda. We appreciate the plug for family lawyers there.
You guys do an amazing job. So, I think it's great. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and providing those insights. It's really some food for thought for both clients going through the process, but I also think for family lawyers, there's really that opportunity to unpack options. I really appreciate you with your time today. Thanks so much, Lynda.
Oh, thank you, Amy. It's been a pleasure. I hope today's discussion encourages people to seek advice early and reminds them that financial planning isn't just about managing money. It's about creating choices and helping people move forward with confidence.
Thank you for listening to Flipper Talks, a family law podcast. We hope you enjoyed the podcast today. We confirm that the information we discussed today was just that, information for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not specific advice. If something discussed has you considering whether you should take steps, it is important to make sure you get professional advice about your unique situation before you proceed, whether that be legal, financial, accounting, medical, or other advice. Please reach out to Flipper if there's another topic you'd like explored, and if you know someone who might benefit from the show, remember to tell them about it. Thank you for listening.